Hey, Shawna, going through perimenopause is wild, and knowing like what to do to maintain as much strength and tone as possible. Like, should I be taking the latest peptides or supplements? What do you think?
Well, our return guest has a lot of answers for us. He is Dr. Stuart Phillips. He is a professor in the Department of Kinesiology at McMaster University. And fun fact, he is the top number 1% of cross field, highly cited scholars globally for the last 6 years. And he's got lots of answers for us and lots of good information.
And if you want to listen to another episode, he was also with us back on episode 51. So after you listen to this episode, go back and check that one. And before we jump into the episode, I want to give a shout out to our Girls Talk Healthy Aging listener, Miss Leslie Melvin. Thanks for listening. Now let's dive in. Welcome to the Girls Talk Healthy Aging podcast, where we dive deep into pressing health and fitness issues facing aging women. I'm Alli Kerr.
And I'm Shawna Kaminski. And together we'll bring candid conversations, expert advice, and personal stories that will inspire and empower you on your own wellness journey. Well, Dr. Stuart Phillips, we are so thrilled to have you back as a return guest. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, you're most welcome. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, and we just wanted to kind of open up with what in the world is going on with nutrition and exercise, especially for the most vulnerable. Well, because I'm in that category,
Yeah.
I suppose.
Yeah.
Consider it a vulnerable population of women going into perimenopause, menopause, postmenopause. Seems like it's the cash cow right now. It's the Wild West.
Yeah. It's I don't know. It's kind of gone crazy. I think. I mean, I got into this. When I say into this, sort of the social media game and getting out there to kind of push evidence and just say, this is the signal and the noise that's out there. And then every day that I kind of peruse social media, I go through periods of like, this is great, and other periods where I'm like, oh my God, like what is going on? And I don't know if we talked about this last time, but you speak about vulnerability, and I think I have friends who work on more the psychology and the social side of things, and there are two times in a girl/woman's life when she's feeling not great about herself, and it peaks when you're in adolescence, as I think a lot of us can testify, and again around perimenopause, right? There's a lot of changes. Your body changes. You kind of feel like people have said, women have said, your body betrays you. It's as if I don't even know myself anymore. So I can appreciate that's an odd feeling and a tough one to have after you've lived it for 45, 50 years. You figure I got this, and then all of a sudden it's like bam. But I do think that there's an industry that's sprung up around helping women, and I think I want to say for the large part that's good. I would say this hand on heart, if men had to deal with menopause, we'd have commissioned a global panel, and we'd try to figure this out, because I don't know if men could hack it, to be honest with you. But women have been told to just put up with it for too long now. So it's about time. But I do think that there are people taking advantage of women in this space and pushing some unneeded supplements in cases, exercise prescription and others, and just being a little bit maybe over prescriptive about what it is that women need to do. When I, come back to, most women don't lift weights. A lot of women aren't physically active. And so, if we could get these women to maybe do a little bit more, that I think would be a huge win. And, is more than, you need to do this, when the answer is actually you don't need to do any of or a lot of the things that are being mentioned. So, I think that's kind of my take. Maybe I'm just overly harsh, and maybe you could set me straight, but that's kind of how I see it.
One of my clients calls menopause adult puberty, and I think that goes along with what
Yeah,
you're saying.
yeah.
Yeah, I thought that was a great
It's
description.
it's not wrong. I think it's a yeah, no, it's sort of a return to like what is happening to my body, like what are these changes that are going on, and I can understand feeling vulnerable and feeling out of sorts if at the very least. So yeah, I totally get it.
Yeah, and you talk about noise and on social media, and I don't think most of us realize how much time we spend on social media. I actually just downloaded an
Mm.
app that's supposed to help you limit your time on social media. And it tells me like how many times I picked up my phone. And it was like 60, it was 69 times from like 5 a.m. to lunch. Like
Yeah,
we don't even think. And then it told
yeah.
me, and I don't know how accurate this is or how they figure it, but like that at the rate I'm going, I'm going to spend 39 years on my phone moving forward. And they could save me 9 hours if I just, could set these by the limits that I set on this app. But anyway, my point being, we are all taking in a lot of
Yeah,
content, and we have those phones in our hands way too much. But there is noise, and those phones, these are devices that sell us all kinds of things that are big money
yeah.
makers. They're time sucks for us and big money makers for somebody else. And those times when we're vulnerable are also times when we're willing to break out our pocketbooks and our checkbooks and our credit cards and spend money on the next thing that's going to make us feel better.
Yeah, but it was so, and the interesting part is I think it's pretty well established that for girls going through puberty, the likes and dislikes on certain social media apps are, basically baked into the algorithm to the next thing that you see is a spot for cosmetics or a spot for, beauty products and everything because you feel about, you don't feel too good about yourself. So I don't know if there's the same algorithm working around perimenopause, but I certainly could appreciate that if you're not feeling too good and then seeing somebody tell you, you have to do this, and basically like if you're not doing this, then you're in trouble, and it must feel like yeah, there's a lot of pressure to change or adhere, and I get it. So to your point, Alli, 100% on yeah, the vulnerability aspect is a big deal.
And I do think that one of the issues is that there are a lot of people with deep credentials that are not starting, but have been monetizing and basing a lot of their programming or supplements on maybe weak science. And so I'm
Mm.
not I'd like your thoughts on this, and what safeguards can we put into place? I often several times I've messaged you and said, "What about this, Stu?" And you're like, "Garbage, garbage." But not everybody's gonna has that opportunity. Like that's I
Yeah,
really appreciate when you answer me that way. But
yeah.
what can Mrs. Jones, Mrs. Smith do when they're getting marketed to and they're feeling vulnerable and this looks like, oh, this is the magic bullet?
Yeah, it's tough. Like I want to, just flat out admit that I think you're right. People with the right degrees, MDs, PhDs, both, are talking talk that would make me, if I didn't have some of the training I did, look at it and go, well, yeah, I get that. Yeah, no, okay, I'm in. I'm getting it. It's tough. I mean, I do think that it's part of the, don't do this or you'll get this is the messaging then is framed in a loss sense, which I think is a little bit of a red flag for me. Like, if you're not doing this, then you're going to miss out on this. That's always framed in the, you're going to lose. And I think when you're vulnerable, you're more prey to that type of messaging. I mean, I do think that, if it sounds too good to be true, it generally is. And I know where everybody falls victim to that around New Year's, around, oh my, I got to get on this, So I understand human nature and the desire for results. I think the truism is that, results generally require consistency of effort and practice. And that's like by and far and large the determinant of anything that comes back to you, particularly from an exercise slash nutrition standpoint. There are, in the women's health space around menopause, some great people out there who are talking about menopausal hormone therapy and about bona fide, legitimate treatments, which are very, very useful. But another theme that I think, and this is probably true, is that no one woman's journey through menopause is the same as another's, right? So some women, actually, menopause wasn't a big deal. Other women, it's a night and day transformation. So once again, broad blanket statements are generally, far and few, or fewer and farther between, particularly when it comes to wellness as opposed to health. And when I say that, I mean, estrogen as a menopausal hormone therapy is very good for bone. That's a substantiated health claim. There's no question about that. But estrogen doesn't, work for everybody. It doesn't alleviate everybody's symptoms. But if you have a bone issue, it's a viable treatment. But there are other treatments too. From a wellness standpoint, when we talk about exercise and we talk about diet, or we talk particularly about supplements, there's no fix. There's no shortcut. There's no you must do this answer. And I've tried very hard to present people with evidence about, bone and exercise, for example, is that, you have to lift heavy weights. And I'm like, that's actually not true. There are various forms of exercise which support bone health, of which lifting heavy weights is one. But it's not the only. It's but it's not the. And that's, I think, when it comes to wellness, there is no universally good prescription, with the exception of definitely try and be as active as you can and eat as well as you can. But that's, I think that extends well beyond the perimenopause period, and just it's a lifelong pursuit. But I get it. It's tough. It's really tough, particularly as Alli mentioned, when you're picking this up. How many times? Like, mine's right here too. Mine's right here too.
Yeah, it told me it was like 69 times. But I mean, and then you think about it. Anytime you're picking up to check the time, it's checking every. Anytime you touch it to move it from here to here,
yeah.
I was shocked. I'm like, that can't be right.
I went back to one of our conversations and regarding supplements, and I just wanted to share your exact message to me. And you wrote Phillips rules of supplements.
Yeah.
Number one, if it sounds too good to be true, it is. Number two, if it is too good to be true, it's banned or illegal. And number three, there are very few exceptions to rule number one. So
True. Good. Well played bringing that up. I think I would still stand by those rules. And, credit to people who try to bring evidence to the supplement industry. But, one of the things that I think a lot of people maybe are unaware of is, around conflicts of interest. Social media requires no disclosure of, people's interests in certain supplements that they are getting paid to promote, or maybe selling themselves and getting a cut of. And in which case, the answer is, well, if a person has a vested interest, you have to treat any advice that they're going to give around a particular supplement with some degree of skepticism. And I think that that's healthy and good. Try not to be too jaded on it. And maybe I've been around long enough to be jaded. Maybe that's the origin of my rules. But I've seen enough supplements come into market and disappear because they have no evidence and they just don't work, compared to supplements that have come into the market and stick around. And creatine is a great example of, it's been here for about 40, 50 years now. good safety record, good effects on muscle, maybe some effects on bone, and we're beginning to see maybe some effects on brain health as well. Now, no hard claims or really great data on the last part, but people say to me, they go, do you take creatine? I'm like, yep. And they're like, what, for muscles? I'm like, no, I'm hoping it's going to work for my brain, because we don't have drugs to treat Alzheimer's or dementia. And I speak with enough people that, exercise in our center who are in their 70s, and the number one fear they have from a health standpoint is cognitive decline and dementia. And, if we had something, and particularly if it were low cost and sort of low side effect burden, and maybe had the muscle and bone benefits, creatine is a supplement that I'm okay with people talking about. Not to sell it too hard on the brain stuff, because I think the jury is still out on that, but I take it because maybe.
And I think that's why a lot of people take supplements, because maybe we hear the claims and we're like,
I hear
maybe.
that. Yeah, I hear that, and then everybody goes, well, you said maybe, and I'm like, well, it's true, but there's a whole lot of evidence that's behind that as well. And so, a few others that kind of show up, and turmeric and curcumin, or spices, which, don't get me wrong, I love turmeric, curcumin, and lots of recipes, and they taste great and everything, but now as a supplement, I'm like, pretty thin. And so just be careful about what you're listening to, and people promise something and you're like, that almost sounds too good to be true. And like, so rule number 2, it probably is. And if it is, it's either, well, if you're an athlete, I say it's usually banned or illegal, or you need a prescription for it. And that's the other, bugaboo, is that there's certain things that people say, oh, but there's, people are giving this. And I'm like, but that doesn't mean that it works. And there's like lots of literature. And I'm like, so cite a few papers for me. And they're like, well, in this Reddit thread, and I'm like, really? A Reddit thread? That's where we're going? Like, yeah, I know. And I'm like,
research on Reddit. Wow.
Yeah. Well, I can find a lot of things on just about anything I want on Reddit.
Oh, yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, I get some interesting information on Reddit. What about peptides? Is something I'm wondering if you're hearing a lot about, because I'm starting to see and hear a lot about women, especially women. It seems to be more women that are taking peptides, all sorts of peptides. Can you speak to the peptides?
Yeah. So, and again, I mean, so to come back to, if it sounds too good to be true. So peptides, insulin is a peptide, GLP-1 drugs are small peptides. And, we inject people who have, either obesity and overweight to lose weight, or if they have type 1 diabetes or type 2 diabetes, they get injections of insulin. And then people, talk about oral forms of peptides, and peptides are just chains of amino acids. So if you take something orally, the peptide itself has to survive digestion. And so I'm inherently skeptical on any form of oral peptide that it could actually survive digestion, pass through the intestine, and appear in circulation to have a target effect. But so, and very few, in fact, none that I'm aware of, there is one exception. We won't get into it because it does have a medical use, but peptides have been shown to actually exist in circulation. And so they survive the digestion process and they get in circulation. So then a lot of people say, oh, well, that's your problem, because a lot of these peptides are injected. And, BPC 157 is a small growth hormone-like analog that's out there and has some evidence. It mostly comes from a single lab. I believe the lab is in Lithuania, and I'm not making this up. And I'm like, it's one lab, and it's one, and people go, oh, well, here's a doctor who's promoting it. And I'm like, still doesn't mean it works. And where is it coming from? What's the quality assurance purposes? I mean, if you're injecting something, it had better be pure, and it had better be some good stuff, like it contains on the label exactly what it says. So most of these are compounding pharmacies that don't have a lot of oversight. You may be getting what you pay for, or you may not, or you may be getting something worse that is contaminated, or what you're injecting yourself with may not work at all, or may have some adverse effects. And so this, the regulatory compliance network is great for drugs, although a lot of people would dispute that. It's non-existent for supplements, and peptides fall into this sort of gray area in between. And I'm just really, hesitant to talk about anything that doesn't have any evidence, B, could be not what you're paying for, like contain none of the active product, or C, contains some of it, but it has poor side effects, or D, doesn't contain as much of the active, and so the list goes on. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people are like, I've been taking this stuff for so long and I'm fine. And I'm like, but do you know what's in it? Like, how do you know? And then the next thing, you check their profile, and they're, a lot of these peptides are sold on these multi-level marketing type approaches. And, I don't want to be too judgmental about that approach, but there's a lot of downsides, I think, with, people who market to people who market to, friends. And that's how I really am skeptical, and I'm a little bit concerned for people's health, and I'm a lot concerned for their pocketbook, because these things are not cheap, and you need clean needles, you need good, but the website, they'll sell you those too. And I'm like, really, this is what we're into, is, buying compounded pieces off of the internet and getting yourself clean needles. I mean, that's some, that's some serious things you're taking on board in terms of your health. I could think of a lot more things I would do before I started doing that.
We're going to interrupt this interview for just a second, because we've got something we want to make sure that you know.
If you're struggling with your health, with your fitness, if you don't know where to start, or you know what to do and you're not doing it, we're here for you.
And all you need to do to get our help is to reach out to Shawna and I at our email, sapodcast23@gmail.com. And we're happy to help, and we will be in touch. Now back to the show. And I'm just thinking, why wouldn't, if this was so great and it was so wonderful, what is the rationale behind, I'm going to bypass the regulatory bodies and go sell it online?
See, that's Alli Kerr's supplement rule number 2 or 3. I know you're spot on. And I pointed this out to people. I'm like, why have big pharma, I know, which is bad these days, and I get it, but
that they want to make money.
Absolutely.
Yes. So, and if there were money to be made, they're going to make it.
Spot on. I couldn't have said it better myself. And so I'm like, I get the feeling if there really was a big market for this wouldn't be a niche, backdoor, slightly, I'll call it, people say, oh, it's regulated. I'm like, no, it's not. But somehow, you're able to get around some of the regulations and rules. And there are people who are quite big advocates, because this is all they deal in. And some of them are MDs. Some of them are PhDs. Some of them, there is no sort of rule around, but there are MDs who are pushing peptides pretty heavily. And I think for a large part without data.
And I think the problem is when people go looking for these magic bullets, they tend to ignore the things that actually really will work. They're distracted from the work, go to bed early, eat your vegetables, get your protein, lift weight, increase your steps. But these are hard habits to maintain. Yeah. And I could just, I'm not I don't want this to fall into these GLP-1 people. That's something entirely different.
Yeah.
I'm talking about the peptides for other issues, right?
Yeah. No. I think, I think we may have talked about this last time. I mean, I want to be clear about GLP-1s, how I feel. I mean, those drugs are game changers for a lot of people. Weight loss is not easy. Being physically active for a lot of people is not an easy thing. Being exercising is, it's the idea is repulsive to some people. So I understand the barriers, and I don't want to, sort of whitewash the whole concept of like, if everybody could just be more physically active and eat better, et cetera. So, people have barriers. Some of them are financial, some of them are socioeconomic, some of them are, this is the way I'm wired, this is the way I was brought up, et cetera, et cetera. There's lots of issues. So I'm not against GLPs. I don't think they're a shortcut. They enable people to probably make better choices. And if some of those are lifestyle related, I call that a win. At the same time, the peptides that some people are saying are anti-aging are, I'm like, yeah. Where is that data? Show me something that's truly anti-aging. Like nothing turns back the clock. And like it can make it's sort of, it can slow the decline and sort of bottom it out, or, and we were talking before the show started, right? I mean, if something could take wrinkles away, and I'm like, that would be, forget it. I wouldn't be on your podcast. I'd be like sunning myself in Tahiti, and, just like, click, what's on next. So, but I'd love for something, so great to exist. I just am, inherently skeptical of a shortcut. And to your point, Shawna, it's putting in the work is tough. I get it.
And if we'd had this conversation like 20 years ago, we'd say the same thing about GLP-1s, like there's no way something could be that, that good and work that well. And, so there it's not to say that, we won't advance and that we won't figure things out. But it's just to say that have these people figured things out that nobody else has that are selling these things online? I don't know. And, GLP-1 was discovered because it was the side effect of, it was meant for one thing and they figured it out. And so, we're definitely going to continue to learn. We're definitely going to continue to advance and figure out more things.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of people who, overpromise, I think, and underdeliver based really on the evidence. And then when the evidence is thin, but I look at the price tag that's associated with some of these things, I'm just like, really? There's a whole lot, of other things that I would be spending my money on, my disposable income, as opposed to a peptide. Maybe, to your point, Alli, maybe like 10 years from now, I could be singing a different tune, and I will be happy if somebody would show me, something definitive around, aging or brain health or skin health, anything. I'd literally take anything and no problem.
I think researchers get attacked like you all don't want us to get, no wrinkles, and you all don't want us to, but it's like,
I actually know the answer. Yeah. I know the answer to anti-aging.
You want to see evidence to, yeah.
And I get it. Like science has made mistakes. And we've made mistakes with drugs and all kinds of things, but that, it doesn't mean that it's all a mistake. I get it. I'll take my lumps, no problem.
So, we've said a little bit about supplements and how I think Alli and I would agree with you that we're somewhat skeptical. There's no magic bullet. Even if you are on a GLP-1, you are still needing to put in the work. What are Dr. Stuart Phillips' big movers?
So, I think, and again, it's a revisit of probably a concept that a lot of your listeners are like, I've heard that a lot, and but I'm just gonna reemphasize it again. I mean, the spotlight was shone on the benefits of aerobic exercise. And so early role models for women in this space, we talked about Jane Fonda just before the show, but, and she championed aerobics. And I think a lot of women would say, that's why I do aerobics, because Jane looked great, and she was, and the words would be, she was skinny or slim, and that was and a female physique, and she looked great.
And look at her.
But she looks awesome to this day.
Yes,
I saw a video of her, and I was like,
wow,
talk about ageless, right? Maybe some help with a few things, but we're not going to speak ill of Jane. Like, she's an icon, right? So I do think, though, that women in the age bracket who are navigating menopause, perimenopause right now, and I put my wife in there as well. Kind of shout out to her, because I finally cracked the toughest nut, which has been my wife. And she's a runner. She loves the Peloton bike and everything, but she started to lift weights, and she goes, I think this is a good idea. And I'm like, hallelujah, So I'm like, I've only been saying this for a few years, but I mean, but to be strong and to maybe have a physique that is, not as feminine, quote unquote. Who was the role model for that? Who was a feminine role model for women, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, with that type of messaging? It's okay to be strong. I mean, I probably am going to show my age, but the first, as I recall, woman who came out was Gabrielle Reese, and said, I have no problem being physically strong and having a physique that you might think is more manly. Like, she was a tall, supremely athletic woman, but had muscle too. Mm-hmm. And, now I think, love it or hate it, don't get, CrossFit, High Rocks, these sorts of things have normalized lifting weights and getting women into the gym, and being strong it's not an unwomanly pursuit. It's not unfeminine. It doesn't make you turn into, the Hulk. And it's okay to have a look like that, because actually, when you get older, women in particular will be limited by something that I think has more to do with their muscle strength and or power than their cardiovascular health. And now that's not everybody. You got to have a good heart, good set of lungs, and do your aerobics and be physically active, because that's what keeps you out of the doctor's office. But once you get to a certain age, you've managed to, so you've not got cardiovascular, type 2, all those things that are aerobic exercise is so good for. Resistance exercise does all of that too. And I think that it used to be weights did this and aerobics did this. From a health standpoint, they're much closer than they are further apart. But the functional aspect of being stronger and having muscle as you get older, not the least of which is muscle pulls on a tendon pulls on a bone. And, so it's not just skeletal health, or it's not just, muscular health, it's musculoskeletal health. And, if you're going through menopause, then bone health has got to be a primary concern for you. So, muscles are not unwomanly, or, phrased alternatively, they're not manly. In fact, it's a great idea to try and preserve muscle, maintain muscle, build it up, because at a certain age, it's going to start going down. And that's unavoidable. And it probably starts much sooner than most women think. And so lift some weights.
Yeah. And it's not, just because you go lift a weight doesn't mean that, if only it was so easy that you would bulk up. It's not going to happen.
Yeah. And then I wish it. Part of my misspent youth was spending way too much time lifting weights in the gym, we didn't have phones to scroll on, so I was generally chatting with everybody, and I don't want to say with friends. That was my best socialization hour. Was the hour I spent, or the 2 hours I spent in the gym. So, yeah.
The other thing that I think is difficult for women, especially like someone like your wife, maybe that loves spinning and running, is
Yeah,
that a resistance training workout feels differently.
it
So when
does.
you're done, you're not as maybe sweaty or trashed.
Yeah, yeah,
And a lot of women discount its value because also muscle development is slow. So they don't look in the mirror
yeah.
and the next day it's like, wow, I'm jacked or I have some muscle. Like it takes time.
Yeah, I think a lot of it too, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. A lot of it just centers around the calorie burn, right? So I've got an Oura ring. Everybody's got a Fitbit or an Apple Watch or something on their phone or something to tell them how much energy they've burned, and they go energy balance. Let more energy burned, I can maintain. I can promote fat loss or prevent fat gain. Again, huge issue around menopause, and so that's the focus and the shift in body composition. Whereas propping up the muscle mass is sort of like, taking that gradual little nudge on the furnace and just burning a little bit more fuel. And so, shifting body composition towards, fat, not the fat gain and not the muscle loss, but in the opposite direction. But as to your point, I didn't sweat. Therefore, the workout was not as effective. I didn't, and lots of things. So you need a vision to the future you, if that's the right way of saying it. And it is like compound interest. I've heard other people talk about it in this way, and I 100% agree. The earlier you start, the more you invest, the bigger the dividend will be. And I think that's a perfect analogy for any exercise period, but resistance exercise, strengthening exercise in particular.
And I do think that women, you kind of touched on this, but I want to talk about it a little bit because I see this a lot. Women that I train, not all of them, but some of them feel like if they're not like killing themselves in a workout, that it's not effective. And then there's the
Yeah,
whole thing of like, stress and de-stressing. And some women come in and they're already like at a level 20 on a scale of 1 to 10 on their stress level.
yeah,
And then they're like, and I'm
yeah,
going to go hard and I'm going to
yeah,
work it all out.
yeah,
And it doesn't, like,
yeah.
exercise does not have to be what exercise is.
I think that, and I think a little bit of, we've sort of created through various television shows and personalities, and now, influencers, and, I think that there's an ideal that people hold themselves to, is to your point. I think you're spot on. It doesn't need to be knock down, drag them out like I'm, literally peeling myself off the floor at the end of a workout. And the point I make to a lot of people is to say exercise is a stress. It's the recovery from the stress that makes exercise so good. But if you got 3 hours sleep because you had 17 hot flashes, and you weren't sleeping great to begin with, you've
Mhm.
got job stress, whatever it is, and you kids, blah blah blah. I don't need to list them all out for everybody. And then you're like, I'm going to smash it at the gym today. And I'm like, that's great. Are you going to recover? Because if you're going to go the next night and get 3 hours sleep the next night, that's not good for recovery. And you're going to skip a meal because you're trying to lose the little bit of the weight that you find yourself gaining. And I'm like, also not good, more stress and everything. So, exercise is great, but only if you recover from it adequately enough. And to do that, you need to eat, and you need to sleep, and you need to give yourself some time to de-stress in other areas. If that's time alone, if that's meditation, if that's whatever it is, for exercise to be good for you, basically. So yeah, lost in the noise. Overtraining, to me, I'm like, oh, under recovering. So yeah,
Mhm.
make sure you recover.
And I think with exercise, whatever exercise form you're doing, like doing the minimum effective dose over long period of time is better than smashing it and then not getting back to it. And so
Yeah,
maintaining this all or something attitude versus like, I'm going to do it all or nothing. And then now I'm sick. Now I need a month to recover. So a little common sense goes a long way.
Yeah, look, you hit the nail on the head with the minimally, effective or important or relevant, whatever you want to call it, dose of exercise. And I mean, I do point out to a lot of people that we know this for sure. So if you take someone who does no exercise, and as soon as they start doing something, it could be 10 minutes a day of literally walking. And I know walking gets poo-pooed, but there's ton of data that's so good for you. 10 minutes a day, and people's mood improves, people's sleep latency gets better, lots of things change. So once you've done 10 minutes a day and you've mastered that, maybe it's 20 minutes a day, or maybe it's some 10 minutes a day 5 times a week as opposed to 3 times a week. I mean, we'd like everybody to be at 150 minutes of moderate to vigorous and twice a week of strength training, and we know that very few people hit those goals. So let's not set our expectations, too high. Let's not use somebody on the internet who has the physique that we might desire as a role model, unless we have enough time to fit what they do into our schedule and realize that they're probably doing that. That's their thing. That's what they do. And you name your profession, and you're trying to do that as well, and going through menopause. I mean, it like exhausting doesn't even begin to touch what I would use as the adjective to describe what that must take. And so I can see why you would fall into that, but a little bit consistently goes a long way, much further than I think most people think. And it's okay to take a day off. Like today I didn't do my workout, and that's okay. 3-4 days in a row, okay, maybe we need a little bit of a restart, but if today is not the day where I'm feeling like I can smash it, it's okay to either take a day off, go a little lighter, do something else instead. The ethos of how I work out now is, live to fight another day. In other words, not so much the fight, but, live to exercise another day. So I don't really try and do anything that is going to put me out of the game so much that I can't do something tomorrow or the next day.
And I'm a big advocate of what I call movement snacks.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of emerging science coming out over, even 5 minutes of movement, because I think then it also is very inclusive, because there are days that, say you're traveling or you're in your office, or there's numerous reasons why you just can't get a workout in. And so speak to a little bit about, the benefit of maybe a movement snack.
Yeah, look, I don't do this work, but I have good friends and colleagues that do. And I think, the whole concept of interrupting what most of us do, the de facto sitting here and sitting and looking at a screen, with getting up and going for even a little walk, like a 5-minute break, or, I've had other people I do 3 minutes of body weight squats. I'm like, if that's what works for you, first, it's great. That's awesome. They have a profound effect, if not the least of which is that at least, your blood flow and everything to your brain improves. People's attention actually gets better. Your cognitive performance nudges up a little bit. It's just about breaking up, I think, the screen time, which a lot of us, we spend a ton of time doing. And yeah, just the restorative power of that sort of thing, but also helping control blood glucose. Is it gonna, you're gonna lose 30 pounds doing that? No. But, if your goal is to lose 30 pounds, you need slightly different ways of doing things. But the activity snack has probably, I think, been underrated as a tool and a way to, get people to be a bit more physically active. And again, it speaks to the ethos of sort of the hardcore nature of some of the advice that I see being dispensed as like, now let's go. And I get it. Like if you're into that, if you're motivated by that, and if that's your jam, like power to you. But
And
not everybody's there, right?
yeah, and as you mentioned, most people are not getting close to 150 minutes a week. So a body weight squat for some people is
It's a big deal.
it's a
It's a
lot.
big deal. Yeah.
So,
Yeah, it's a big deal. Yeah, I mean, and I say I don't mean to diminish it or in
I
any
know
way. Sort of, it's
exactly.
just it's one of those things that I think people they go, oh, body weight squats, like put some weight on the bar. Come on, let's
Yes.
go. Let's not sort of all of the sort of derogatory comments. And I'm like, live and let live a little bit. Like some people do nothing, and actually quite a large percentage of people do nothing.
Most
And so
people are doing little to nothing.
Yes.
so that's the needle I'm trying to move because, from a public health standpoint, the cascade of getting nothing to something it's enormous. Like it would put the wellness industry out of business in, overnight, essentially. And we wouldn't have to worry about a lot of things. But I think the emphasis on, if you're doing something and you're still gaining weight, it's clearly not working. So you better, or don't do this, and don't do zone 2 aerobic exercise. And I'm like, who would say that? To like, well, first, what's wrong with zone 2 aerobic exercise? It's not bad for you. It's ridiculously good for you, and or don't lift lighter weights. And I get it. Like, nobody's going to do arm curls with a pencil and get stronger, but who
At least they're
lifted those?
moving. Hey, at least if they're doing that, they're moving. And I tell my clients, exercise is movement. It's just, there's the different levels of that movement, but it's moving.
But there's been a lot of, put down the pink weights, and I don't, want to be overly dismissive of that as a message. If you find the pink weights easy, then maybe you could lift the blue weights or whatever is next up from pink. But there's a pushback against the pinkization of products that are now marketed to women. Well, you're being derogatory about the pink weights because that's what women lift. But I mean, I get it. Like 1 pound dumbbells are, you're not going to win any strength competitions. Mm-hmm. But to your point, Alli, if you got up and you stood up and you curled some 1 pound, 2 pound, 3 pound, 5 pound dumbbells, then you know what? Who did that? Well, you. Nobody else did it, and you did it. And you know what? If that's what you want to do and everything else like that, but if your goal is to, enter high rocks, you need to train a little differently, right? So I think everybody sort of gets that. But let's not shame anybody for being A, physically active, or B, engaging in some form of structured physical activity with a goal, which is the definition of exercise, right? So once people have got, maybe that's an entry level. Maybe it is. And if you want to progress and that's a goal and that's what you want to do, but the health benefits of so much of being physically active are achieved with pretty small doses. And, we've got data on this. It's not me making stuff up. So I think shaming people for doing something that is perceived as, not the best. If you've got everything dialed in, feel free to dish it out. But I don't think most people have. So.
Yeah, and it might be the best for them. A 5 pound
Absolutely.
I have a lot of clients that's the best for them. And there are a lot of ways, as you know, that you can load that or make that 5 pound dumbbell more intense with pre-fatiguing or eccentric loading. And,
all kinds of stuff.
There's access. There's the people that are sending out that message that just lift heavy. That's the only way. It is very annoying because it just discounts a lot of access and availability to people that are just doing their best.
Yeah. Well, so, I mean, how many people have access to a squat rack and a barbell in their basement or their house? I mean, it's a tiny fraction, right? So if lift heavy generally means you have to go to the gym, and the concept of going to the gym or the time spent to go to the gym is just not available to you, then Why would I ever tell somebody that's what they have to do when the reality is the evidence shows that there's no health outcome, including bone, that is exclusively monopolized by lifting heavy. So, that's where when I hear people say that, like, you need to lift heavy, I'm like, no, you don't. You don't need to, unless the desired goal is something structured around lifting heavy. People go, bone. I'm like, not true. Just simply not true. Two recent, what we call systematic network meta-analyses showed that there's various exercises like dancing and, jumping, even 10 short jumps a day.
I was just going to ask you, because I often cite this study that says, 2 bouts of 10 jumping jacks a day can help with bone density. And I want to have the Stuart Phillips.
It's the truth.
Yes.
It's the truth. I mean, jumping is high, what we call high impact, and bone, actually, after about 10 to 15 jumps, it's mechanical sensors that are responsive to sort of loading. They actually switch off for the large part. So when you're doing rep number 45 of something under the bar, the bone's mechanically responsive elements they're done. They're over. So not to poo-poo getting under the bar if that's what you like to do, but you can do it a lot of other ways. Walking, maybe not the most effective. Running, swimming, definitely, like no body weight support. Still a great form of physical activity, but from a bone perspective, jumping, pretty good. So, let's stop telling people there's anything they need to do unless we have evidence for that. So, and that's where I think a lot of women they feel inadequate, guilty, they're doing it wrong, they're confused, they're frustrated, and that's just, that's a poor state to be in.
And a lot of us have been inactive for years or forever. So anything that we can do to start getting some movement in is in the right direction.
I absolutely
celebrate.
Absolutely. And you're doing it and doing it consistently. I can't really underscore that enough as such a big deal. So, power to folks like you who are at the coalface, working with women to get them to basically engender those types of habits. And hopefully it becomes something that's more of a lifelong pursuit, because and maybe somebody will invent exercise in a pill, probably not in our lifetime, but you get it, right? I mean, when you pointed out, Alli, right? 20 years ago, GLP-1s, I'm like, not a chance. There's nothing like that ever going to happen. And here they are, right? So maybe one day there'll be exercise in a pill. I don't think there'll ever be one that gets everything that exercise does, but I genuinely believe that absolutely core, in fact, maybe the top of the list core activity that you can do for yourself to age well, men or women, any stage of life, is to be physically active, and to be a little bit stronger than most people think that they are or that they should be.
And I think that, even though there's a lot of misinformation, disinformation on social media these days, I think that over time, our daughters and our daughters' daughters might have a better, they might have a better experience going through perimenopause, menopause, just because, it is the Wild West right now. And I think that over time, maybe some of that fluff hopefully will fall away and the real facts will emerge. That's my hope anyway, because like when I was
no, I think you're spot. I think you're right. Well, I hope that you're right anyway. So.
Yeah, because when I was like 20 years ago, menopause was a 4-letter word. Like it just was not. It was Voldemort. We do not speak of it. Right. And so we're talking about it. Younger people are more aware of it. They're preparing. You're getting the message out of, strength, like invest early, this compound interest. of, so that maybe our children might have a better chance of aging better. One would hope.
I think girls, your daughters, teens, young women have role models as women that are will influence their behavior. They can see themselves being that person, and I think awareness and policy. This is where all of these things start. So big hand clap to anybody that's telling their daughter, even at a young age, that this is a normal part of being a woman, and it's okay to talk about it. There's no stigma, there's no shame. That was obesity, a lot, and still is in a lot of places, right? And I mean, it's sort of the last acceptable social stigma that we can still kind of oh, look at that person. And now menopause, people are pulling back the covers, and I think that's step one in raising awareness and getting people to talk about it, getting people to and look, no lived experience, right? But I'm an ally. Hopefully that's how I'm perceived, and not being too preachy or judgy. And I think it's huge. I think it's something that women will go through, and it's a watershed moment for a lot of them. And good advice and solid evidence-based treatment and claims and everything are where this is going to go. Yeah, right now it feels a little bit like crazy town, but I don't know. And maybe that's just the world, the way the world's working now too. I don't know.
I think that it would be great if we want to help the next generation to age better and get that compounding interest, instead of just encouraging girls to be cute or pretty, also encourage them to be strong.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Not that you can't be both.
You can be it all. You can be it all.
I absolutely. And whatever it is that shifts the needle on, is that I think when we just before the show, I said, well, you go to our student gym, it's the aerobic machines, and that's where you find most of the women, and the weights are down here. But my parachuting into that facility, I'm like, see a little bit more, women down here, maybe some guys up there. There's been a lot more sort of crossover into it's socially acceptable. Women feel confident enough to be there. They have the confidence to know what they're doing there. You're working with people, as you said, Alli, that they come to you and they're like, something's wrong. Like I know I'm supposed to be doing this, like, help me. And, so you're learning for the first time how to lift a weight. And that's a massive step. I can't underscore that enough, because it must be so hard for some of those folks to make that, and it takes a lot of confidence. It's overcoming a lot of anxiety and some reservations, and
a lot of courage.
Absolutely,
to walk through the door and to get started.
Absolutely, yeah. So if you weren't there and you're able to make that, the message is a massive, kudos, congratulations. You've taken the small step, but realizing that the consistency is it's a tough one, but it will help, and you will see the benefits. It'll take some time, but developing consistent habits, we know it's tough.
So, having said all this, if you had a wish for our listeners, what would it be?
Oh, well, I mean, if it's not to get stronger and lift some weights, or if you're not physically active, first of all, it's never, and underscore never, too late to start. If you think that a small amount is not going to be, the big, it can be. Consistency is really what wins out. Strength will help at some point more than you think, and I say that with a mom who's 86, and she struggles with activities that are 100% a function of her strength and power, getting in and out of a chair, getting in and out of a car, moving around certain things and, moving quickly in some certain scenarios. And yeah, it's a big deal. So start now. It'll pay dividends for you for sure.
And my wish is that those of us that are in our perimenopause, menopause age range and beyond will be more intentional about spreading that message to girls that are the future generations to be strong.
My message is just to take those baby steps and get in on that compound interest. Whatever age you're at, you can start cashing in.
Thanks for listening. You'll find me, Alli, on Instagram at Alli Kerr Fitness.
And you'll find me, Shawna, on Instagram at Shawna Kaminski. Feel free to pop us a DM with questions and or feedback. If you're enjoying the Girls Talk Healthy Aging podcast, please subscribe and share it with other health-minded women. Ratings and reviews are also much appreciated and help us get our message out to a larger audience.
Until next time, be healthy and be happy.